Well, I finally got my GQ lifted up on the 3-inch, looking good. So now, since I got all the suspension out of that, I've got all the suspension and the springs sitting in here now. So it's up on its own shocks and springs now. I couldn't use the original Patrol ones because they were eye and eye, because the diff actually doesn't just do this, it goes up and down. But when it goes up and down, because of the suspension setup that's in here, it doesn't go up and down level, it goes like this. So there's that and this at the same time, so I had to go eye and pin. So I've finished all the shock mountings down the bottom here, so they're all nice and solid, ready to go. I've still got to just brace these bottom plates here yet. The other one's still got a gap under there where I need to put a plate under here. Other than that, the panhard's all mounted in, all welded up, all good. Shocks are there, springs are in there. I found that because the spring on this side is sitting higher, that one there needs to be longer. I had a couple of these old spacers lying around, so I threw one of these under the spring up under there, and it sits pretty well bang on. So that solved the problem about different height springs. I've decided I'm not going to put the drive unit on the diff itself. I'm going to put it up here further underneath, so it means I can carry a spare drive shaft. Up here I'll make a bearing carrier with a flange of this will bolt to, and have just an output shaft out here, which means I can run any electric motor or petrol motor or whatever I want on it. I am thinking about maybe a small scooter with one of the variable drives on it. I had this idea here with a worm drive, but it's just too slow. It just takes forever. It's like 50 to 1, and you know, I want some speed out of this thing, not just low power. So but because it's going to be like that, I can make my brackets in here, and I've got the 12 volt winch, 12,000 pound winch, and I've just pulled it apart, and instead of being this the other way round, I've just drilled a hole in the back of the casing and run the shaft straight through the back into the first set of planetary gears. So depending on how fast this is, I may just bolt that on a bracket up there, which will give me forwards and reverse. But I may actually want some sort of clutch to release it, because if I'm using this to get out of a bog hole and the speed starts to get up and the motor can't keep up, then these wheels are going to become a drag in the mud rather than a pushing force. So I need to be able to disconnect that when the winch motor reaches its maximum potential. So I've got my other wheels on here now. The 32s are on here now, so there's a lot more room and clearance in here. I get a lot more turn out of the wheels. For the steering, I did have a down here I've cut a steering rack in half and put a worm drive on the top there, which turns the steering wheel about the same speed as a person would turn the steering wheel on their own. So there's plenty of torque, but I may go to a steering box just for more robustness. I've got all the braking lines in on one side. That's completed. I put all the brake lines inside this was it LLDPE tubing. It's like water pipe stuff. It's like 5/16. Brake line fits perfectly in it. It's like Teflon basically. So any stones and twigs and sticks aren't going to affect it. I didn't have a long enough piece of brake line, so I just put a joiner in between here. So, but this means I can put a brake line sensor in here later on if I want to, or whatever. And then just up to the front. Got the coils, and I've got all this solid mounted in here now, so all the brakes are working good. Finally got the bolts on there, so that's all nice and tight now. I just got to make a little piece in here. I might get a bit of tube and put a bolt through a bit of tube in there so I can adjust the distance in here. So if the brakes, I want them a bit more touchy, I can open that out, so as soon as there's any load on the hitch, it'll put the brakes on, or whether I can back it off maybe for some of the sort of mountainous downhill stuff. I don't want it constantly on all the time. So and I'm still going to have the I've got my cable now for the bought a cable, so I've got a nice big cable here to run into my GQ for a manual lever on my dashboard, and that'll come to a connection on the back of my car with that another cable will come from here and come around and clip on, so I can remove it, but it'll give me a manual brake lever, because none of these brakes are electric. I don't want electric, I want analog. Less problems in the bush. I don't need electronic things ripping a wire apart and then that's the end of it. I've got to put all the wiring for the lighting in. I may run it inside the chassis rail. I've got a bit of plastic conduit. I might just ram it all the way down through the chassis rail and pop it out the corner, both ends, something like that. Otherwise, that's about where I'm at. I think I need a longer brake line. I've got one more that's a couple inches longer than that, because at full travel I think that one's pretty stretched, so I'll have to get a longer one there. But you probably can't really tell on here, but the suspension's really good. It's going to hold up, and this is about the height it's going to sit, so that's the height of the chassis there, so it's got plenty of ground clearance. Yeah, still yet to mount the water tank and a couple of bars up there, but I'm just waiting to see what I'm going to do in here before I put any more bits and pieces in. I may better run a whole length straight through rather than welding one piece and then another piece and that sort of thing. So we'll see what happens. I may put it like an undercage so I can just scull drag it over rocks, things like that. But otherwise, it's coming together. Everything's all mounted up nice and neat. Yeah, I've still got the brake line to this side to do. I've got some more tubing for that. I had to go get some more of this blue tubing, but I got all the bits for that. Yeah, and steering, as I said, I was going to use that, but I may use a steering box and just link it to this, because I can't get to the rear steering arm anymore down the back there, because it's behind all the shocks. So I'll have to come over the front, mount something in here that joins to this with a couple of tie rod ends or something like that, and then that'll work. So that'll be all electric on the dashboard, left and right. And then obviously I have a locking pin to lock it in the parallel position. It'll only be good for off-road. I wouldn't want to have anything go wrong with it on the highway and have the thing swing out sideways. So yeah, that's where I'm at the moment. I'll keep you all updated as I get along. The body still hasn't been touched. It's still sitting here ready. Once I finish this chassis and get this part all finished out, then yeah, put this off to the side and bring the body and out of the weather under here, and I can get underneath and prop it up on some drums and really go to town on it. And yeah, the fit out, that's going to be the fun part. Can't wait. Anyway, I'll keep you all updated, and thanks for watching, and yeah, cheers guys and girls.